Hello and welcome to two podcasts in one. I'm joined today by Julia Felton. First, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Carrie Gallant, and I'm the host of the Tall Poppy Revolution radio show. And my co host today is the amazing Julia Felton. Julia, would you like to introduce your podcast?
Sure. Carrie, first of all, thank you so much for the idea of this collaboration. It's such fun. I'm so looking forward to it. But I run a podcast called Impactful Teamwork, and it's a podcast for senior leaders to help them improve leadership and teamwork. When we spoke, we had so many synergies about what was going on. We thought we could have a really great conversation that would benefit both of our audiences.
Absolutely. And so that's what we're doing today. And it's going to be a bit freewheeling. We have an idea of some things that we wanted to share with you that we see coming up in our audiences and our groups, our clients. And thought we would just have a conversation about decision making. And in particular, how do leaders create the conditions for better decisions? That is, there's so much pressure, there's so much strangeness going on in the world, or so we think. We're always in situations of uncertainty. But this one always seems a little bit more so than the last one. We thought we would get together and have this conversation and bring it to you, and even just to see what we create together in our joint thoughts and ideas around decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Julia, when we initially had our conversation that led to this, I just curious today, what drew you back? What were you excited about talking about today?
Yeah, I think this whole topic of decision making is just so relevant for leaders today. And I think partly because leaders have always struggled, or many of them have struggled to make
Mhm.
decisions. But what I'm seeing right now that I think is becoming so important is actually the fact that leaders don't actually want to make decisions. And what I'm seeing out there is a lot of
Mm.
decision fatigue
Yeah.
because things are moving so quickly, aren't they, Carrie? Everything's go. And a leader is just a decision. And leaders are just burnt out. And I know for some, certainly the big decisions, sometimes I just don't want to make a decision. I don't want to get it wrong. So let me just
Yeah.
stop and not make any. And of course, that is very frustrating for their team members, but also for their suppliers and their customers and other vendors because they don't know what's going on. So I'm curious, are you coming across that as well, or is this just a UK thing that I'm seeing?
No, rest assured, this time it's not just a UK thing. No, yeah, I am definitely seeing things like that out in the field in general, and also with my clients from time to time where, yeah, I think I work primarily with women leaders, and so there's often some things I think that show up more acutely, perhaps more, and I think maybe surfacely, and that's a new word, surfacely, by the
I
way,
love that.
where it tends to be closer to the surface that women are more willing to talk about these kinds of things and look for how to do it better. Now, why do we do, first, I'm just going to go on a small little tangent. Why do we do that? Part of it is because for many women, as we've been growing up from girls to women, we're often come from that place of we're already not good enough. We're already not enough to be at the table. We're questioned differently than male leaders and soon to be leaders are as well. And so there's a second questioning, there's a doubting that can happen perhaps more acutely for women. That's partly what I'm seeing. I think this reluctance or difficulty to make the decisions are partly what you've hit on the head there, Julia.
I agree because growing up, I know that actually there's so many times where I've doubted my intuition about making a decision.
Mm,
And I think women can
mm,
really do that. And although women are super intuitive, there's so many societal things around us that make us doubt ourselves. Even I
mhm.
remember in my own case about what career should I go into? It's like, I was like, oh, I'm not sure I should do this or this. And in the end, my parents ended up making the decision for me. And I didn't like it, but I abdicated responsibility, right? By not making the decision. And I think that's something that we see quite a lot coming up. People
Mhm.
don't like a decision or don't like something that happens to them, but they've given away their power by not making a decision in the first place. So
Yeah.
I think for our team members as well, I see that happening a lot. Team members not wanting to make decisions in the workplace for fear of getting it wrong. I think there's a lot of anxiety in the
Mhm.
workplace right now. The economic conditions are quite tough. People are worried about losing jobs. So people don't want to stand up and be seen in your tall poppy revolution. Don't want to stand up, be
Mhm.
visible, be that little poppy that might get shot down.
That's right. That's right. I like your word abdicate because I think that that encapsulates it, that what we are and what I think, and I have to remind myself even of this myself, that no decision is a decision.
Yeah.
Not making a decision is still a decision. Inaction is a decision. What I see in some people is, and this I think it not really in my clients, this I think tends to take place more for I see it in people for whom they really don't have a belief, conscious or subconscious, that they have true agency, that they have the ability to make a decision that will affect their own lives. So their locus of control, if we think about the locus of control and the locus of influence, their locus of control is quite small. And let's face it, our own locuses of control are small. It's thoughts, feelings, and actions, right? Those are the three things that we can only control. We can influence just about everything else. So I can influence Julia and invite her to come today, but only if we find a place that we want to talk about together and have some feeling that we have something to share, right? I can't make her come to this call. Now we can try and exert power over to make someone do something, but in my experience, that rarely goes really well. You might get what you want, but at the end of the day, would the implementation be complete? Sometimes yes, sometimes not really, right? So the engagement, the ownership in the actions that a person has acquiesced or abdicated, even to use your word, and is doing, they're not doing with 100%
Yeah.
typically, right?
And we know, of course, that this is such a massive problem in organizations now. The Gallup statistics came out just recently, and about 20% of people are highly engaged in the workplace, which means most of the team members out there are just, I say they're kind of going through the day a bit blindfolded, right? They're showing up, but they're not present. They're not in the moment. They're just doing what has to be done. And that doesn't help the business move forward. And those are really the group of people I think that don't really take decisions. I think it's really the ones that are happy to take decisions are the people that are highly engaged and can really
Yes,
have got some skin in the game, right? As
right.
they know if they make that decision that something's going to happen, but they are also prepared to see the consequences through of that and be accountable for it.
Yeah. And I think you raised something really interesting here, Julia, because it's a bit of a, not pet peeve, but it's a bit of a bugaboo or whatever we might want to characterize it as, that I see out there in the field, let's say, is that idea of ownership. And one can call it accountability, but I really want to talk about it as the balance of responsibility, that there is always, just like there's always a decision, whether you're saying you're not making a decision, no decision is still a decision, that the consequences of our actions, whatever they are, real. It's human nature, I think, to not necessarily think immediately about what those consequences are. So when things like AI get introduced, for example, I remember, this is a while ago now. I remember when reproductive technologies were coming to the fore, and there was a massive outcry amongst many women, many organizations, women's health, about the implications of that. But not everybody was thinking about that. They were thinking about, oh, this makes these things possible. Now, I'm a both and kind of person. And so both these things are possible, right? Both can exist. The challenge, I think, is are we looking at what those implications are as we are making those decisions? But I want to circle back, Julia. You were just talking about the, for many, it's perhaps more as team members. I actually am worried about leaders who are doing this as well, who are not making decisions, who are looking to others to make their decisions. And you used the word intuition a little while ago, and it's about not trusting ourselves as leaders to say, I have what I need, or I know where to get it. And circle around engagement as well. Everything that I've learned about engagement over the past 20 some odd years. And I'm actually really curious, by the way, whether those engagement scores are really that much different than they were 20
No,
years
not
ago.
really.
No, I don't think so either. So we are always in this scale of looking at those engagement scores. But back to where I was going is that in my experience, team members, including leaders, when leaders are part of a team like the executive team, are more engaged when they are a participant in those decisions, even if they're not the ones, and mostly when they're not the ones who have the ultimate accountability for that decision. And because I think, actually, interestingly, we went through this here in Vancouver for the 2010 Olympics, where there was a large scale, one might call it a survey, but it was really reaching out and asking people what they thought of Vancouver's going for the 2010 Olympics. And of course, there were a lot of people who didn't want it here, who raised the flags. They saw the consequences, especially in the downtown core, what it was going to mean for the inevitable, it's happening right now with FIFA, which is here as well, to cleanse, for lack of a better word, to cleanse the downtown core, make it pretty. Like for FIFA, we literally, as a city, an aquatic city, like we're not in the water, but we're surrounded by water, had to move the moored boats out of the downtown coves because it didn't look good, right? So some people were reacting to the 2010 Olympics on that level, others because they knew it was going to close down part of the downtown businesses. It was going to have a lot of impact on small businesses, which are the lifeblood of the city. But here's the thing, once that public participation was done and the decision was to go ahead and we won, everyone got behind it. Everyone got behind it. So it's an example. It's outside the workplace, but it's somebody else's workplace, but it's the community. It's an example of a situation where a tough, impactful, long-term decision that when others who don't have the final say are involved in that process and are listened to. And yeah, some of those things were created for the 2010 Olympics, for example. Some of those inputs changed what happened on the ground, how the event was managed and things like that. So it was integrated, and some things were not. But it was the process, Julia. I think it was the process. It felt fair and open to the vast majority of people. And so at the end of the day, that decision, it just became something we all got behind.
Yeah. And I love that because I think there is a whole piece about we need to have consultative decision making. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to make a decision. You're aware, I bring leaders out to partner with the horses, and we talk about positions of leadership. And you have leading from the front, leading from behind, and leading from the middle. The middle, I say, is the heart of leadership, and that's very consultative. But at some point, somebody has to step forward and actually make the decisions, because otherwise we'd just be going round and round in a circle. But it's so important, I think, for these major decisions, and actually anything in business, to get the viewpoint of the people on the coalface. And it reminds me of that story. Is it John F. Kennedy when he was walking around NASA and he's talking to the janitor and he's, what's your job? It's to put a man on the moon, right? So the janitor knows exactly how his purpose is and how it fits in.
Yeah.
He's also the person that knows what are the right types of brushes he needs. And too often in organizations, too much of the decision making, because of the hierarchical structures we've got, sits too high at the top. And the leaders at the top then become overwhelmed. They become the bottleneck. The decisions don't get made. And the people on the floor can literally make much better decisions because they know what they need.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. I agree with you 100% that it is around giving that level of agency, that level of decision making at the best level, at the best earliest level that helps to reduce that cognitive decision overload at the higher levels where that responsibility, it ultimately rolls up as well. I had the good fortune a number of years ago to work with a major telecoms company here in Canada as part of a consultant group. And one of my roles was to work with new managers and leaders on the new performance development system and training them in that. And one of the pieces that this company was really good at, actually, Julia, speaking of engagement, their engagement scores were in the tank before the then new leader came on board and did a top to bottom inquiry and started to bring in, not talk directly, but started to bring in input from all levels. And it was actually somebody out in the field who gave an idea that the company continues to run with in a public-facing way. Now, that would never have happened if that chain of communication hadn't been opened up through this organizational inquiry and then bringing up all of those. In fact, one of the examples I gave was very close to that story you told about JFK, about the difference between somebody who thinks that they're a bricklayer and somebody who thinks they're building a cathedral. Same action, same task. but an entirely different understanding and connection to the purpose of what they were doing because they understood it, because the person who was in charge of building the cathedral had shared all of the different ways in which that person laying the brick mattered to the cathedral. That, by the way, if you think of Chartres Cathedral, that took something like 600 years to build. So you can be damn straight that everyone who had a role knew that it was part of that cathedral that was going to be at the outset.
And I think that comes back to the whole concept of context.
Yes.
And making sure that whatever we're doing in business and whatever decisions we're making, we understand the context around it. Your example there of the Olympics in Vancouver, lots of many different decisions, but what's the context? Why are we doing it? Why is it? What are the benefits of doing it? Rather than going, we're having the Olympics and that's just what's going on. People need to understand, and so that they've got buy-in to it.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. Nobody likes to be told what to do.
100%.
But actually, when you understand the rationale for why a decision is being made or why we're considering making a decision, then I think people can sum up the pros and cons of it and decide themselves which they want to go. And some people naturally won't be behind it. But often I found those people that aren't behind the decision, they can understand why the decision has been made and why we've decided to go route A rather than route B.
Yeah. I agree with you. And you reminded me of something else too that I think is really important to talk about. And that is what we know now, or we think we know, because it's always changing. But even 20 years ago, in behavioral psychology and places and other fields, organizational, it was still the idea that we made decisions with our logic brains. That we make decisions with our logic brains. Yes, we have feelings, but we're going to feel them first, and then we're going to come and we're going to make our decisions with our logical brain. Now, thanks to the neuroscience and developments of neuroscience and MRI imaging and all of that, we now know that no, the reverse is true, that we actually make decisions all the time based on our emotions and our feelings. Logic can come in, absolutely, because we want to think through those logical conclusions, for example. And at the end of the day, the vast majority, if not all of our decisions, are influenced by our emotions. And in many cases, they are actually driven by the feelings and the emotions. So imagine what we've just talked about up till now. A team member who has their own feelings about being asked or required to do something in their job, but has mixed emotions about it. How are they likely to approach that? When it comes to me making a decision, how are we going to be involved? How are we involving people's feelings? Now, when I think about the Olympics again, as that example, you damn straight, that was a lot of emotional that got involved with it, right? The way all of our sporting world tends to have a lot of emotions behind it, certainly watching the fans get involved in it, for example. And so we do ourselves a disservice as leaders I believe, when we don't factor in how are people feeling about it? How am I feeling about it? And when we can have those kinds of conversations and even just talking with it with another leader to open that up, I believe that also lets us open up to hearing our own intuition, because our intuition's talking to us all the time, but are we listening? Are we listening to where that is? I think when you were talking just a minute ago too, Julia, about having all those different inputs from team members, from those conversations, I think all that information then is there for a leader to even sense into their intuition now based on all of that information, whether it's leaning in the logic direction or it's data around emotions and feelings, that can get us to the best decision.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because exactly what you're saying, we think with our brain, but actually, I mean, the latest neuroscience, I think, is showing that we've got more brain cells in our gut than we do in our head. But so many leaders, and I've been guilty of this a lot, we walk around and our heads are disconnected from our bodies, right? And we don't listen to it. But I know I hired somebody into my team when I was in corporate, and I did it because exactly logically he had the skills I need in the team, and I hired him. My gut instinct was I didn't think he was going to fit, and he didn't, and it was a disaster. It was the worst hire I've ever made. But it was so much energy to actually then counsel him out when we've made the wrong hire. It was so difficult.
Yeah.
And I was like not wanting to upset anybody. So I wasn't making a decision about what to do with him. And it actually took my team turning around to say to me, Julia, if you don't let that person go, we're all going. And I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
whoa, okay. And so I think, why do we also not make decisions in the workplace? Because it gets some conflict going, particularly
Yeah.
if it's a recruitment decision or releasing somebody from the team. We'd rather not have to have that conversation. So then we let things fester, and then they tend to explode. And we're like,
That's
well,
right.
why did you all of a sudden get so angry about that or whatever? And it's because it had been building and building, and then people just vent because the emotions, they have to come out at some point. You can only suppress them so long if we're not listening to them.
It's true. And it's interesting what you just said. I just had this conversation the other day that when we think that something is arising that is interpersonal conflict, percent of the time, the source of that conflict is actually structural. It's actually a system or it's a process. So this is where logic and feelings, emotions can really knit up well, is we use logic to describe the situations that we want, what they can look like, and also please describe the situations that you don't want so then you can see, oh, this is what I need in order to have in place in order to mitigate or to ensure that I'm not going to get what I don't want, but to increase the opportunities for me to get what I do want. So thinking about your hiring situation, this is not a blame thing, by the way, Julia,
No.
but just thinking about hiring generally, we often go to creating a job description, for
Mm.
example. But how often are we actually including in that job description or thinking about what culture do we have here anyway? Right? I often am working on the other side where I am working with leaders who are looking to move to a new organization. And a question that often doesn't get into that mix is what is the culture of this new organization? How will I feel? Will I like it? What do people who are already there think about the culture? Do that interview. Forget the people at the table that are interviewing you. Go find somebody who works there and talk to them because it's this 360 degree of information that gives us really the fulsome place of the logic and the emotions in order to make those really good decisions. I would love to circle around something in my head that you were saying a little bit ago, and it reminded me that we've been talking about logic and emotions. You started to go into talking about that intuition, right? That we trust our bodies, and it's that multiple intelligences that we now know that we have. We don't just have that single
Yeah.
intellectual intelligence, it's emotional. That was the second one that really came out in the 80s and 90s. But now we know we have somatic intelligence, we have gut intelligence, there's multiple intelligences. And one of the things I think that you and I look at in the work that we do with our clients is also around energy,
Yeah.
around energy, and how you know when you walk into a room or somebody walks into a room and the energy changes without them saying a word.
Yeah.
So I would love to why don't we dive into this one? Because I know that with the horses, having worked with some horses myself, I know the work that you do, a lot of that, because it's nonverbal. The horse can't talk.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, the work I do with the horses and with leaders is so powerful because it's really helping people become very present to what's going on so they can read body language. We can
Yeah.
all read it, and we're reading the body language, which is physically how somebody's looking, but more importantly, the energy that they're giving out. And so many of my clients say, oh, I can't do that. But like you said, we've all walked into a room and somebody who's having a bad day before they even say anything. You do know. So I think energy is such an important thing in the workplace that we don't really
Hmm.
talk about. And there's energy on so many different levels, energy of individuals, energy of teams, energies of organizations. And you need to get a good match for you. You talked there about the person searching for a career. You've absolutely got to find the right place to land. And some cultures, and I think culture is energy, right?
Yes.
Go, go, go,
Collective
go, go.
energy.
Yeah, exactly. Collect and you go. And some people thrive in that environment and some don't. And there's not right or wrong. It's just how's that going
Mm,
to land in your
mm,
nervous system? So
mm.
what I love about the horses is they have what we call amazing sensory acuity. In other words, they can read the energy field from a really long, far away. And so they know what's going on with people, but actually they can even tune in to people's emotions and their heartbeat and stuff like that. So people can get regulated by the horses.
Oh, yeah.
So what I've learned from all my years of working with horses is the horses have made me very grounded, because if I come in with very chaotic energy, if I'm not careful, I make the horses really chaotic. But we see this all the time with leaders in the organizations where something goes wrong and we get into a firefighting exercise. And the first thing the leader does is go, oh my God. And, and all the team go, oh my God. We've just created this crazy dysfunctional energy. Whereas the horses are much smarter. They see something and then they become very discerning and they stop for a moment. And I always give this analogy. Maybe they see a fire in the distance and the horse doesn't go, oh, it's a fire, and run away. It goes, looks up. Is that a fire? Let's take a minute. Let's figure out what's going on. Oh, no, it's not a fire. It's Carrie having a barbecue. I don't need to worry about it, right? But our response in business is to go into this really frenetic energy that it's just so dysfunctional that people want, and then that becomes very draining and debilitating for people. So I think it's really important to understand that everything has an energy to it. It's just what type of energy is it? And the best energy, of course, is laser energy that cuts through everything, right? And that's a single focus beam. That's why businesses and individuals that have a very clear purpose and direction, they get to go so far because they're not getting distracted by everything else.
Oh, I love that. I love that what you just described there with the laser single focus and how a collective team focused on that thing. As Margaret Mead said that the small group of people can create a massive amount of change. And I believe that would be just what you're talking about, where they are laser focused on the thing that brings them together. And I love what you were talking about. And it reminded me of a story of one time when I was working with another woman with her horses locally here. And she had asked me a question about something when I was with one of the horses. And my objective was to be leading the horse without reins, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with this kind of work. I had nothing leading the horse physically. I was using my energy to tell the horse that we are walking in this direction. And then she asked me a question while I was doing that, and I didn't quite know what the answer was. And it was an internal question. And the horse just went like this and stood right in front of me and wouldn't go forward.
Yeah.
He picked up on my not chaotic energy, but my undecided energy because it was like a chink in the chain of my leadership moving forward. Fascinating to know that our non-decision moments also have energy in them. So that's why I raised that particular example. And I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the things. This is where, Julia, you and I have some connection around working with energy, working with the unseen in a way. And the horses act as a mirror to what's going on inside. And one of the tools that I use with my clients, first I start with myself, is human design as a blueprint for that inner blueprint that shows what a leadership potential is, what the challenges are, almost like a heroine's journey, if you like, that shows where are the likely challenges that are unique to each person that you're meant to meet. We're meant to go through challenges. We're meant to climb that mountain, but along the way we are meant to stub our toe. We're meant to drop something. We're meant to pick up what the alchemists left there for us to learn along the way so that we can summit whatever peak it is that we are here to do in our world. And it's very much drawing on our energy and that internal knowledge, that inner authority that comes from understanding and knowing and being in touch with those various intelligences, whether it's somatic, the gut, intellectual, of course, that's always going to be there, but all those other areas. So yeah, I wanted to just surface that because I think we have these unseen worlds that we are bringing to our clients where they might not have thought of things this way, but it's showing another way to see leadership in action and to see the impact implications as well as the potential for even growth, higher leadership if one wants to think it that way.
Yeah, and I love both of our work involves intuition to some degree. And I'm a big fan of human design, and it's really helped me understand the way that I operate. And I love it as a kind of roadmap for people to get the best out of themselves. And it helped me understand why I operated in some ways and why some stuff landed for me and other stuff didn't, because everyone's unique. But I just love the word intuition. I just wanted to share this because intuition is always this thing we talk about it, but it's really difficult to understand what it is. And this was actually shared with me by a Canadian equine teacher. And if you take the word intuition, you break it down in words, it's in and then tuition. So inner
Ah,
teaching. And so when you start thinking about your intuition, it's your
I
inner
love that.
teaching. It's what you innately know, but because the brain's got in the way, we've forgotten and we forget to tune into it. So I think because I was just like intuition, I couldn't really understand it. But when I recognize it's my inner knowing, my inner teaching,
Yes.
I think that really helps
Oh,
people understand.
that's great, Julia.
Yeah.
I love that. And you also reminded me, I've been doing this series recently, just this past week on both Substack and LinkedIn I call it the practice of stillness.
Mm.
And the practice of stillness is really, it is my number one in human design is the stillness gate.
Right.
Don't worry about that. It's the energy that is collectively around us right now is to bringing forward stillness. So for those of you, if you might be feeling even some energy from, if you're listening very soon after we've launched this, but it isn't always, it's around all the time. But this idea of the practice of stillness and linking it to intuition that is how we access intuition. With all the noise and the chaos and everything, if we're busy on our phones, our devices, what's going on, or even if we're listening to podcasts. Now, I'm gonna counter myself in just a second, because for some of us, the way our minds work, we actually get intuition when we are doing something else. It might be listening to a podcast. It might be working with your hands. It might be going for a walk. It might be sitting and meditating, or just allowing the brain open space.
Mhm.
So, various different ways in which stillness can come about. But really, what I think it is the calming of whatever the noise is, so that inner knowing has space, and openness to come out and to be available to us. Like you said, we can't access it if we're not listening to it. Or it will tell us. In some cases, it will just slam you upside the head if you don't listen to it.
And it's really interesting because it does make so much sense, because when we look at how do people get into flow, that state when everything's going and it's so easy, and all of a sudden, a bit like this podcast, 30 minutes have gone by and it feels like it's been about five, right?
I know.
What actually has to happen before you actually get into flow state is that you go through a period of struggle, and then you step away and it's like you have a shower or you go on a walk or you listen to a podcast, and then all of a sudden, because you've slowed down and you're not focusing on it, the brain subconscious goes to work and starts figuring it out. And
Yeah.
get my best ideas like when I'm out riding my horse or in the field with my horses and stuff like that. And I can sit at my desk for hours trying to do it. And then I know the minute I take a break and step away and do something different, and I get into that. And that's really when you're in that stillness place, isn't it? It's your
Yeah.
brain is, you're almost slowing down your brain waves if
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. We are slowing down the brain waves, perhaps from the beta, which is the
Mhm.
working wave, into a bit more of the alpha or theta when we're sleeping. I think deep sleep is theta. We can access different things, which actually reminds me to circle back around to one of the pressures I've seen for leaders is this. I'm going to call it mythical notion that leaders make decisions fast. The best leaders make decisions quickly. And we might be talking about make a decision and move on. So there's two things I want to say. One thing I learned from Louise Hay actually was don't sweat so much about making the perfect decision. In fact, don't even think about it at all, because there is no perfect decision 99.9% of the time. Why? Because you can always make another decision.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that one just blew my head open. Oh, I can always make another decision. So forget about perfectionism. The other part of it is in human design, we actually learn that there are different styles of decision making, and that the fast, make the decision now doesn't work, especially for major issues, for about half the population who are meant to go ride the emotional wave before they know what the level set good decision is. They need to be in that calm. You talked about that earlier, that calmer brainwave state to know what that decision is. So we bring the intuition in, yes, as part of that decision making, the logic and the emotions, but it has to ride the wave. If it's going like this, the wave, then you're probably making a decision that is not going to feel correct once it's been operationalized. And
Yes.
then there are other types of decision making too, some of which are more instantaneous, but it's knowing and being able to listen to that much in the same way we can listen to our intuition.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I know, like on my human design, for example, I meant to wait 24 hours to make a decision.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And I find that really difficult because I see things and I'm an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. I like bright, shiny objects. I'm like, oh, I just invest in this or I just do this. And then sometimes I have to go, no, stop. Stop.
Yeah.
24 hours before that you're actually allowed to invest, Julia, just to let it
I think my
land.
mom, I
Mhm.
know my mom was probably similar to you because she always said sleep on it.
Mhm. Yeah.
She always said sleep on your decision. I think because she knew that worked for her. Yeah. So
But I
so
think
it's interesting.
I think it is so important because there's very few decisions in life that you can't change. I was about to say, ideally, you don't want to change your decision about who you marry, but in the moment, you're making the decision and it feels like it's the right decision. We know, unfortunately, about 50% of marriages end up in
Hmm.
divorce. You can change things. And I know when I moved to Yorkshire, which was about 250 miles up the country, and everyone's, you're mad. And I'm just like, well, if I don't like it, I can just come back again.
Smart.
I'm a bit more laissez-faire about some of these decisions because there's very few that are actually, in
Mhm.
my world anyway, that are life and death. I'm not a surgeon and I'm not that, having to save people's lives. And that might be slightly different in that environment. But for most of what I do, I can change it. The world's not going to fall apart if I get it wrong. But to actually make a decision is really good. And I think I'm quite good at making decisions and I just get on and do it. And I think that might be partly my early career. I was in the hotel industry. You're sitting with a client in front of you and you've just got to make a decision in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And deal with things. So I've always just got on and dealt with things and made decisions. And then afterwards thought, reflect on it. But yeah, nothing, nobody's died, nobody's fallen apart yet. So yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, and you have raised an important point that I do want to circle back to and acknowledge that there are many professions and times in life where we do have to make an urgent,
Mm,
quick decision, like first responders,
yeah,
doctors, you mentioned. My formal profession of being a lawyer, there's immense pressure to have
yeah.
the right decision, and sometimes that has to be done there. And how do we do that? We go through a lot of training,
Mhm.
a lot of training, a lot of practice so that those professions can make those decisions like that because of the investment of time and energy and money, of course, to get there, to get to that level of proficiency to make those types of decisions. So I did want to acknowledge that it's not just we're going to step from here to there and make those kinds of urgent decisions. No, we have a lot of things to do between where we are today and where we want to be if we want to be the person who's making those decisions. The same way that our executive and C suite level clients, they didn't just start from day one and get into the C suite. That took them a lot of time and practice and learning and experience as well. So that even
Mhm.
in your experience that you described just now, Julia, I imagine came through your life experiences and you that wasn't what was this something that you've always been doing like when you were 23? Could you say the same thing?
Yeah, no, so I got thrown in situations to make decisions pretty young. I'm assistant general manager of a hotel. Your boss isn't there. You're the one in charge of the whole hotel. You've got to
You
make a
learned
decision.
fast.
There isn't one. So you learn, like you say, really fast on the job to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So, but I also think as well, one thing we haven't touched on that, just to kind of think maybe might complete the loop is I was always really lucky in that I knew if I made a decision, my boss had my back, right? So
Yes.
I was in what we call a psychologically safe space. And because there were very few decisions I was going to make that were going to
Hmm.
result, like I said, somebody dying or bringing the company down or something like that. A guest might have been upset, a supplier might have been annoyed. Nothing fundamentally the world wasn't going to fall apart, let's put it that way. So I think it's really important that within the workplace, going back to culture, that we're creating this environment where we're
Yeah.
encouraging people to make decisions, and it's okay if they get it wrong. I call it reward the try. Actually, we want people to do this because I'm really
Hmm.
worried that what we're going to find happening in business is all the decisions keep getting escalated up. Everything gets stuck at the top of the organization. And then what happens if you haven't practiced making these decisions, then the
Yeah.
people in 20 years old are in organizations now. What happens in 30 years' time? They haven't had experience about medicines.
And then where will we be?
Exactly. So I think that
Yeah.
that's really interesting to think
I
about.
love what you're saying, and I agree with you. We're kind of circling back around to culture again and the role that leaders play in designing and curating that culture and to enable even team members to be able to have those decisions like your experience, Julia, being thrown in to the deep end, let's say, and forced to make those decisions and to fail and to make mistakes and then have someone have your back, like
Mm,
you said. I had a similar experience as a young lawyer as well. And those things are so important. Why? Because if as organizations we want to make the best decisions. And this has been in the circling around for the last 10, 15 years that we want more innovation. We want more candor from our team members. Guess what? Your team members are not going to bring candor to the table if they don't feel safe doing so. If they get shot down or criticized for their ideas, why would they bring the next
no.
idea, the next best idea that you aren't seeing because you aren't down in the field where they can see what's really happening? We need their intelligence. We need their intelligence from being on the ground where they are in order to make the best decisions. So we need to curate, cultivate, and expand those solid cultures that allow for candor, that are psychologically safe, whatever terminology you want to use, you have their back
Mhm.
so that they are bringing that stuff to you. So they'll have your back when you make that decision. When
Yeah.
you make the call, they're going to have your back too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's so important. And I think particularly with this rapid pace of change, where even as
Mm.
a leader, I think leaders need to understand that they can make a decision and change it because
Yeah,
we haven't navigated this environment before. We don't know what's going to
that's
happen.
right.
And gone are the gone are the days of 10-year business plans, right? Most companies are probably only about 3 years in their life cycle, then they've got to reinvent again. So we're always going to have to change it. And to go to the Brené Brown stuff, it's fine to be vulnerable and go to your team. This is based on the facts. This is the decision we're making today. This is the path we're going. And it's fine to change
Hmm.
it because
Yeah.
the world isn't stable, it isn't constant. So our decisions are going to have to morph and change to adapt to the environment. And this is where we come back to culture and environment is so
Hmm.
important because our decisions aren't made in isolation. They're in relationship to the environment, to other team members, to suppliers, customers. All of our decisions always impact other people somehow or other situations. And therefore, we've got to consider all of those things when we're
Yeah.
making decisions and have the right infrastructure around us to do that.
I love our conversation, Julia. I think we could probably go on for a lot longer. And I think there's other threads that we may want to pull on and come back to more in this conversation. And let us know what questions you might have or what your thoughts are about decision making, your experience, and how we can all contribute together to making better decisions. And if you're concerned or you've got some conversations, some strategic conversations coming up, I always work with my leaders on having those strategic conversations, the challenging parts of them. And I've got a few different things coming up in the future for strategic conversations labs. So go ahead and get in touch with me. And you can follow me on Substack or on LinkedIn with my name. And Julia, over to you. What would you like to share as we close
Yeah.
out today?
Most of my work is around creating high performance teams, and obviously decision making is part of that. I have a framework called the Unbridled Teamship Roadmap, which takes you through all of the areas that you need to look at, which includes decision making and having those challenging conversations as well. And people can go and take the Turbocharge Your Team quiz at businesshorsepower.com/quiz, which is always a great starting place. And then we'll hop on a call and we'll chat through those results. And find out the areas in your business that need the most attention first around your team. So is it more around trust? Is it around how do we harness the energy? Or is it how do we become way more adaptable to manage the environment around us?
Beautiful. Lovely. I've had a lot of fun, Julia. Hope you
Dude.
have too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to close us out for our joint podcast today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and some great decisions.
Yeah.
Bye for
Happy
now,
decision
everybody.
making. Okay, bye-bye.